Hello my friends, and welcome back to another Baldur's Gate 3 character building guide. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're covering my pick for the best Glamour Bard build in Baldur's Gate 3. This support character provides tremendous damage mitigation to your team and disrupts enemy plans, and also comes with a very powerful ability that lets you win fights against single strong enemies like bosses pretty much for free once every day. You may have heard some people say that Glamour Bard is a weak class, and I want to say right up front that those people are wrong. Glamour Bard is a very powerful addition to an honor mode party, but you do have to be aware that this is a pure support character. You won't be doing enormous amounts of damage, but you will be stopping enemies from doing what they want, keeping your party members alive, and increasing your odds of victory significantly by enhancing your own plans and disrupting your enemy plans. Before I begin, I do want to take a quick moment to say thank you so much to ABA for the €10 donation, Matt Botke for the $10, Mario Meyer for the €18, and Drex and Lorenzo P for becoming channel members. Thank you so much, my friends. I really appreciate the support. It really means a lot. Alright, let's get glamorous. I'm using this custom Githyanki character as the example character here because I think that overall Githyanki makes the strongest racial pick for a Glamour Bard. When you're building a Glamour Bard, something very important to look for when you're choosing the race for your character is, do they get armor proficiencies? Glamour Bard by default only gets light armor, so picking a race that gives you medium armor proficiency like Githyanki or shield proficiency can vastly improve your defensive capabilities. This is very important because this is a support character. Having higher AC means you stay alive longer, and you staying alive longer means your whole party stays alive longer. So picking a race that improves your defensive capabilities means vastly greater longevity for your entire party in fights. Of course, you can build this for one of the companions as well. From a flavor perspective, I feel like Glamour Bard fits pretty well for Astarion or Will or even Gale, all of whom are very glamorous. But if you are building this as a custom character, the most important thing is to either get medium armor or shield proficiency. Githyanki is my favorite of these because you get medium armor proficiency and also get astral knowledge, which makes you significantly better at being the party face because you can just learn all of the intelligence skills for free with astral knowledge, for example, and just be able to use them in conversation, and just lets you fulfill more of that utility and support role for your party. And also, their once per day Misty Step at level 5 is a great panic button if you get in trouble. Other great picks include half Wood Elf for shield proficiency and the bonus movement speed, which is excellent for this character to stay out of trouble, or even half High Elf, which gets shield proficiency and an extra wizard cantrip. This character is actually fairly starved for cantrip slots. There's a lot that we want and only so many that we can take, so that can improve our utility, or you can even take Booming Blade to make yourself a reasonable threat in melee if the situation calls for it. Although they don't get armor proficiencies, Halfling is still an excellent pick as always. The ability to reroll ones will let you maintain concentration on your spells and effects much more easily, and because you're going to be doing all of your party's dialogue checks, the ability to avoid natural ones on those makes you much better at the utility that this character provides. For this build, as part of my Simple Class Guide series, we're going to be focusing on a mono-class Glamour Bard. However, Glamour Bards can benefit tremendously from a number of 1 or 2 level dips into other classes. In fact, the multiclassing options for 1 or 2 levels for this character are so varied and so excellent that rather than just mention them now like I've done in previous videos, I'm going to do a whole separate section on multiclassing at the end of the video to talk about those. However, for this build, we're going to be starting with a level of Bard. For our cantrip selection for this character, we're going to be taking Vicious Mockery and Minor Illusion. Vicious Mockery is lower damage than just using a bow in the early levels, but the disadvantage on enemy attack rolls is very relevant in the early game, and remains pretty relevant for this character on into the late game, since we intend to take slightly longer fights than most other party compositions, because we're going to be playing a little more defensively rather than trying to just burst down enemies immediately. The disadvantage is going to come into play a lot more often than you might think, and is a lot of damage mitigation for your party. It's also just very funny because Vicious Mockery has great voice lines. Minor Illusion is an excellent utility cantrip. You can use it outside of combat and enemies walk towards it, which can let you group them up for your AoE spells or those of your allies, or split them apart in order to pick them off one by one without their allies being able to help them. We also want friends, but we can delay this till level 5, but this is one reason why I mentioned High Half-Elf being a pretty solid pick, is that that lets you get all 3 of those cantrips at first level if you take Minor Illusion as your Half-Elf cantrip selection. For our spell selection here, we're going to take Healing Word. This lets us support our allies and get them up if they fall down, apply the buff on healing item effect to them very easily, just an excellent use for our bonus action in the early game, and Dissonant Whispers, which is the best combat spell for a bard at early levels. This can lock down melee enemies and prevent them from doing anything entirely, because it stops them from moving, so Dissonant Whispers is just the best level 1 combat spell available to bards. Our last 2 spells are a little bit more subjective. These 2 you're always going to take, but the others have a little bit more variance to them. Sleep can be very helpful in the early game. Longstrider is mandatory if you don't have another character who can cast it in your party. Every party needs access to Longstrider, and it's very much worth spending a spell slot on it if you don't get it from something else. But if you do have another caster who can cast it, or you're using camp casting, then you don't need Longstrider as a spell known on your bard. Tasha's Hideous Laughter is great lockdown, and Thunderwave gives you a pretty solid defensive option as well. I am going to assume that you have Longstrider on another party member, so for this pickup we're going to take Tasha's Hideous Laughter, and we're going to take Sleep, because Sleep gives us a really strong early game combat option. We will respec this to another spell later on. For our ability score selection, this character of course wants really high charisma, because that's what all of our abilities and spells are based on, and we want 16 dexterity because the whole point of this character is to lock down enemies before they can act effectively. For that we need to win initiative. We're also very likely to be in a robe at various points in the game, because there's a lot of robes that give us very high value, so having higher armor class even while in a robe with high dexterity is very important. We'll also of course take 14 constitution. If you're really nervous about playing with 14 Constitution, you can take 14 Dex and 16 Constitution. It will overall be a little bit worse, but does give you a little bit more leeway for play mistakes, because it'll give you a few more hit points and make maintaining concentration on spells if you do get hit a little easier. Finally, we'll put our last 4 points into Wisdom to give ourselves better Wisdom saves. Another option is you can take 10 Wisdom and 17 Charisma, use Ethel's Hair to hit 18 Charisma, and that will get you an extra feat, and this character can benefit from that significantly, so if you don't have another party member that needs it, then this is a great option as well. Or you can also take 17 Charisma and use Actor instead of an ability score improvement to get even better skills. If you do that, you're going to want to respec to that at when you first get your feat at level 4, rather than take it initially, but that is a very solid option as well, because the Actor feat gets us skill expertises, and makes us even better at our dialogue checks. Speaking of dialogue checks, when you are selecting skills for this character, you can benefit a lot from having Sleight of Hand. We've got decent dexterity, so if nobody else in your party has it, then you can take that. Perception is always good to have, and if you get insight from your background, like from the guild artisan background like this character has, that of course helps in dialogue as well, but the most important thing is that you have persuasion and any other dialogue checks that you happen to want to roll. So we're just going to put all of our points into the charisma skills to make this character as good in conversation as possible, but if you don't feel like you need all of them, the most important one by far is persuasion, and then you can take some other utility skills, like Sleight of Hand. If you're a Githyanki, you're going to want to set your astral knowledge to intelligence, which will make, even despite having 8 intelligence, make you pretty good at rolling these skills, which are most often rolled during conversation, so this character can handle those as well if you have this astral knowledge ability. That's all the decisions that we have to make at level 1. Oh, other than our starting instrument, of course as a bard build, if you get this wrong, it will completely ruin the build, so make sure you pick the right starting instrument, and then move on to level 2. At character level 2, we get our second bard level, and this gives us Song of Rest, which makes our short rest abilities come back more often, another way in which we support our party. This is a very powerful class feature, so really nice to get that this early. We also get Jack of all trades, so even if we aren't a Githyanki, we are still reasonable at rolling skill checks on things like the intelligence skills. This won't let you reliably succeed on them all by itself, but is a nice bonus and means that you'll still sometimes hit those skill checks when you want to. For our spell selection at this level, we can go back and grab a utility spell that we didn't pick, but for a combat spell, one that I actually have started to like more and more is Heroism. I used to not value this spell very highly at all, but in the early game, 5 hit points each turn, 5 healing each turn, is actually a lot of additional hit points for your party, so this can actually make a melee combatant survive a lot longer if you can maintain concentration on the spell. So I'm going to recommend picking this up if you're confident in your positioning in fights to not get the caster hit and lose concentration on it. Thunderwave also helps a lot to keep you from getting in a position where you're taking hits in the first place, because it can push enemies away from you. So if you find that enemies are getting to this character a lot, Thunderwave can be a great panic button. At character level 3, we get to choose our subclass, and of course for a Glamour Bard build, the class that we're going to take is College of Glamor Bard. This gives us the Mantle of Inspiration ability, letting us spend our inspiration points as a bonus action to give an ally 5 temp HP. This includes ourselves, so you can cast it on yourself if you want to, and this temp HP lasts all day until it's removed. Now at this level, that's not that much in terms of additional hit points. At level 3, your party probably has an average of like 25 to 30 hit points, so this is somewhere around a 10% increase to your overall hit point pool as a party when you cast it. But a 10% increase to your hit point pool is certainly not irrelevant, so Mantle of Inspiration does give you a little bit more longevity, though it's not going to win fights all on its own without the secondary effect. The secondary effect is that if an ally is hit by a melee attack while they're under the effect of this ability, the attacker becomes charmed. Charmed prevents that enemy from attacking the caster of the charm effect, and Mantle of Inspiration counts as originating from the character that had the inspiration on it. So give your fighter 5 hit points, they get hit by a melee attack, that enemy cannot attack the fighter again, because they are charmed by the fighter. There is no saving throw on this effect. If they hit that character, they will always receive the charm. At low levels, this usually won't make a huge difference because enemies typically only have 1 attack in a turn. But as we go up in levels and enemies start attacking more frequently in a turn, this becomes extremely disruptive. An enemy that hits your ally with their first attack will not be able to attack the same ally again. So you are going to prevent enemies from doing a lot of the things that they wanted to do. One thing that this does mean is that this party will want to play a little further spread out than most other parties, which tend to clump fairly tightly together, because what you want is for an enemy to hit your ally and then not have the movement speed to be able to change targets between 2 different allies. So when they do happen to land a hit, it costs them effectively half of their turn. This charm effect has no saving throw, so even against really dangerous enemies, the only way they get out of it is if they're immune to charm, and you can manually trigger it by moving an ally next to an enemy, and then moving away to trigger an attack of opportunity if you want the charm effect. This becomes very important for an ability that we're going to get later. Again, at this level, this is not a tremendous increase to our survivability or capabilities, though it is a nice bonus. But this becomes a very, very powerful tool as we continue to level up, stopping enemies from doing what they're intending to do. For our spell selection at this level, we get access to 2nd level spells, and we're going to take Cloud of Daggers, which is just one of the most solid spells in the game. It's the best damage spell in the game at level 2 because it's 10 damage on average with no saving throws, and it activates both when you cast it on an enemy and at the beginning of their turn. So they take 20 damage on average before they act again, so it will let you just kill a lot of weaker enemies before they ever get a turn, and of course you can concentrate on it if you can keep them in the field of the Cloud of Daggers for even more damage over longer fights. We'll also be replacing a spell because at this level, Sleep has lost a lot of its utility. Enemy hit point pools are just high enough that Sleep is no longer going to prevent them from acting as frequently, and we can just grab another level 2 spell. Which level 2 spell we pick up is going to depend a little bit on your party composition. I recommend either Heat Metal or Hold Person. If you have a lot of melee characters in your party, which Glamour Bard plays well with melee characters, Hold Person gives you these automatic criticals, which those characters can benefit from a lot. Heat Metal is a better defensive option because the disarm on Heat Metal is extremely powerful, and it also does do damage over time. Since this character plays so well with a lot of melee allies, though, I think Hold Person is just going to be really strong and will let you, again, win fights against single strong enemies. Even if you only land this once, then a series of automatic criticals from your allies will be enough to kill that enemy even before they get to save against it a second time to break out of it. Finally, as a level 3 bard, we also gain expertise in 2 skills, and the most important one to put expertise in is, of course, persuasion. This is the most important dialogue skill in the game. It governs some of the most important checks in the game. It also governs your price at merchants. So as a charisma-based character with persuasion expertise, this character is going to give your whole party a massive boost by making these skill checks reliably and giving you better prices on all the items throughout the game. For our second one, Deception comes up the most often, other than Persuasion as a dialogue skill, but the second expertise is a lot less important. If you took Sleight of Hand in order to have this character be your lockpicking character, then taking Sleight of Hand expertise, of course, is going to be good because that means you'll succeed on lockpicking checks much more often. Also, if you're planning to take the Actor feat, then you don't want to take Deception as a skill expertise because Actor will give that to you for free, and in fact you don't even want to take Deception as a skill known because Actor will give that to you for free. At character level 4, we get our first feat as well as an additional cantrip, and the cantrip that we're going to take is Friends. This gives us advantage on our charisma checks, which is very important. Even on honor mode, of course, you can use this and then leave the area before the duration runs out and enemies will not get mad at you. And a lot of the most important persuasion checks in the game are against people who you were going to fight if you fail the check anyways, so there is no downside to using Friends in those encounters. If you already have a third cantrip, you can take Blade Ward to keep yourself alive in an emergency, or Light as a good utility spell. For our spell selection at this level, we can grab a utility spell like Invisibility or Enhanceability. The best combat option is probably Crown of Madness. There's a couple fights that this is really good in because it causes enemies to be hostile to one another, which means they're not attacking your party. So any of those options are going to be solid. Since we're focusing on the combat capabilities of this character, I'm going to suggest taking Crown of Madness. For our feat, like every other honor mode character before us, at level 4, we're going to take Alert. Going first the importance of going first cannot be overstated in honor mode. If you go first, enemies often don't get to go second, especially because this character has tremendously potent lockdown abilities. So making sure that we have very high initiative is extremely important. This character especially wants to go first because you really want to position yourself where you're not going to get hit. You want to use your abilities and then move so that you don't lose concentration on your very powerful concentration spells and effects. At character level 5, we get an extra inspiration die and Font of Inspiration. That means that we can use our Mantle of Inspiration many, many more times per day, since the inspiration dice now come back on a short rest. With 4 per short rest and 3 short rests in a day, because we're a bard, that is 160 bonus hit points that we're providing to our party over the course of a day. That's not insignificant. That's a lot of extra hit points. You won't get all the value of all 160, because that would require enemies to deal damage very evenly, but you can see how this is starting to stack up to a ton of damage mitigation, even before you take into account how many enemies will be skipping their turns because they'll be charmed and unable to find a good target to attack. For our spell selection at this level, we're going to take Hypnotic Pattern. This is the most powerful control spell in the game and a great thing to concentrate on, and we're also going to replace one of our lower level spells, something that we're not using as often. In this case, it's going to be Heroism, which was useful for the early game, but no longer particularly impactful because we have better things to concentrate on, and we're going to take Glyph of Warding. Glyph of Warding is our best non-concentration combat spell, AoE damage and control, so it's a great thing to cast when we're concentrating on other spell effects. Awesome spell that no bard should leave home without. At character level 6, we get 2 awesome Glamour Bard class features. The first of these, and it's not actually listed in the level up screen anywhere, is that our Bardic Inspiration, our Mantle of Inspiration, goes from giving it 2 allies 5 temp HP each to giving 3 allies 8 temp HP each. Now, 8 temp HP is still not going to block a full attack at level 6. Most enemies will be doing more than 8 damage, of course. But this means that for each use of Bardic Inspiration, we're getting 24 hit points split across our party. Times 4 Bardic Inspirations per short rest for 4 short rests in a day, that's 384 hit points that we are now applying to our party over the course of an adventuring day. Again, we won't get the full value of all of them, though it's going to be closer to that than you think, because enemies will often do AoE damage, which it will help mitigate. So this is a tremendous boost to our party's overall survivability. We also, at this level, get Mantle of Majesty Command. This ability lets us once per long rest activate it as a bonus action to cast the command spell, just like the normal spell, though with a couple key differences that I'll talk about in a second, and then as a bonus action continue to cast the command spell every turn for 10 turns. This requires our concentration, so it does differ from command in one very important way. You need to not lose concentration on this effect. And it's once per long rest. So the best way to think of this ability is basically as being a 6th level spell slot. It's more or less the same as getting a cast of Eye Bite, the 6th level control spell, once per day, 5 levels early. So you can see just how powerful that is at winning encounters where there's one strong enemy that you want to lock down. In any encounter where there's just the one really powerful enemy, or where there's one powerful enemy and then a bunch of weaker enemies that are easy for your party members to deal with, this ability more or less wins the encounter outright because it just locks them down forever for 10 turns, and it does so without a saving throw. The Mantle of Majesty command always succeeds if the enemy is charmed, so enemies who are charmed automatically fail their saving throws against this effect. And you have a way to apply Charm with no saving throw through Mantle of Inspiration. Any enemy that hits a Mantle of Inspiration ally with a melee attack is charmed with no saving throw unless they're immune. So against any enemy that's not immune to Charmed, you can have an ally with Inspiration, provoke an attack of opportunity from that enemy, they get charmed, no saving throw, then you Mantle of Majesty command them, no saving throw, and then they're gone from the fight forever. It only costs your bonus action to maintain, so you can continue to do other actions during the fight, like use Glyph of Warding, or even just Vicious Mockery, while you are single-handedly locking down the most dangerous enemy in the fight. There's also an important difference for Mantle of Majesty Command from normal command, because it's an ability and it does not have the restriction that it can't target undead enemies. Normal command can't target undead, but Mantle of Majesty can, so you can lock down even some of the more dangerous bosses in the game who are undead with this ability, with no saving throw or any other effect, as long as they're not immune to charm. I will say that this is the ability that people get really hung up on when they are saying that Glamor Bard is a weak character. Because it's only once per long rest, it feels like you're going to have to long rest frequently, and because it's concentration, it feels like you're going to lose concentration on it. But I think that that's just a misunderstanding of how to use this ability. How are you going to drop concentration on it when the enemy that would be hitting you is groveling on the ground helplessly? And because it is an ability that wins a fight without any other resource expenditure once per long rest, it actually increases your party's longevity because you have all of your other resources available for future fights if you only have to spend this one ability to win one fight per day. So those concerns, I think, are vastly overblown when discussing this ability. Now, you do need to be careful when you use it and how you position so that you don't drop it to an errant concentration spell. But if you use this ability correctly, it's incredibly powerful. We also get another spell at this level, and because we have a lot of powerful concentration effects, Bard's spell list is already pretty concentration heavy. We're going to take Plant Growth, which takes no concentration, and can completely ruin the day of melee enemies. It's especially good if combined with an effect like Hunger of Hadar that prevents enemies from jumping out of it and does damage over time. So Plant Growth is yet another way this character has to just lock down entire fights. At character level 7... we get access to 4th level spells, and there aren't that many 4th level spells that are that important for Bard, so you can go back and grab a utility spell from an earlier level, something like Enhance Ability to make you even better at your skill checks, or just pick up one of the powerful utility spells from 4th level. Greater Invis can be used if you are abusing that mechanic to do stealth archery effects, or you can take Freedom of Movement as a panic button. This is the one that I like the most here. It doesn't require your concentration, so it won't break your other effects, and if an ally gets stunned, this is a great way to support them. Don't cast this at the beginning of the day. Use it as a panic button if an ally gets stunned in a bad situation. You can snap them out of it immediately, and then they do get the benefits of freedom of movement for the rest of the day. At character level 8, We get to take our second feat, and of course we're going to take an ability score improvement to max out our charisma. Although a lot of this character's effects don't have saving throws, so our charisma is actually a little less important than for most spellcasters, we still want to max this out as quickly as possible because it increases the effectiveness of all of our spellcasting. For our spell selection at this level, at this point you should have a good idea of what your party needs, though you can pick up something like Enhance Ability for some of the more critical late-game skill checks that you don't already have advantage on from friends or expertise in those skills. This can be useful, though you'll often get it from a cleric, but again, at this point you should have a good idea of what your party is missing and be able to pick up whatever is going to be helpful for your particular situation. At character level 9, we get 5th level spells, and the 5th level spell that we're going to take is Hold Monster. This gives us another way to lock down single strong enemies, even if we've already used Mantle of Majesty for the day. So this character can fulfill that role in many fights per day and go a long time without long resting when you have Hold Monster available. At character level 10, we get another set of amazing abilities, and this is why I recommend that Glamour Bards don't typically multiclass more than 1 or 2 levels in another class, because level 10 is just so incredible for Glamour Bards. Firstly, it's not listed on the character sheet, but our Mantle of Inspiration doesn't show up in the level up screen again, but Mantle of Inspiration at level 10 goes from hitting 3 allies for 8 hit points each to hitting 4 allies for 11 hit points each. That means each cast of Mantle of Inspiration is worth 44 hit points, and we now have 5 uses of it per short rest, because we got an extra inspiration die as well. So that is 20 times 44 is 880 bonus hit points for our party per long rest. Obviously, we won't use all of these, but it's still an enormous amount of damage mitigation over the course of an adventuring day. Add in the Wondrous Gloves for an extra inspiration charge, so that we get 6 per long rest, and that is 1,056, 24 times 44 is 1,056 hit points per long rest. Just an unbelievable amount of additional hit points for your party. At this level, your party probably has an average of 80 to 100 hit points each. So this doubles or even triples the total hit point pool of your party over the course of an adventuring day, just from having this character present in your party, and that's before you take into account how many enemies will not attack because of the charm that you're going to be passing out with no saving throw constantly and passively because of Mantle of Inspiration. In addition to that, we also get all the normal things that bards get at level 10, which makes level 10 such an excellent level for bards. Firstly, we get a cantrip, so we can take True Strike to annoy people in the YouTube comments, massively increasing the value of the character. And then we get an additional spell. This spell is, again, a utility spell that we're going to grab from earlier levels, though having Confusion is still pretty useful. It is a concentration spell, so you won't use it in every fight. But this character wants your allies to be mixed up with the enemies a lot because you want them to be taking melee attacks to trigger your abilities. Confusion doesn't target your allies, and you don't really care if the enemies run around and hit your allies while they're confused because that's just good for you. So this is a pretty solid control spell as well. We also get some more skill expertise, so we can go ahead and boost our remaining dialogue skills to the maximum level, and we get 2 Magical Secrets. Magical Secrets is an incredibly powerful ability, of course, boosting the power level of any bard massively. This gives you yet another of the most potent defensive options in the game in the form of counterspell. So we're always going to be taking that. It's just the best defensive reaction in the game. This character doesn't currently have great uses for its reactions, so counterspell is very, very powerful for this character, giving you an excellent reaction, and of course, spending your reaction to negate an entire enemy turn. Now enemies that want to melee attack can't really do anything because you're a Glamour Bard, so they're just going to be charmed and wandering around sadly. And enemies that are spellcasters can't really do anything because you have counterspell. The second magical secret spell that we take is a lot more open to interpretation and personal preference. Some amazing options include Command. This can be cast at the same time as Mantle of Majesty command, so you can spend your action on default command and your Mantle of Majesty bonus action on the second command, and then you can lock down 2 enemies every single turn, as long as you have spell slots to spend on command. More if you want to upcast command in order to hit more enemies. So this just makes this character tremendously powerful at locking down enemies. Of course, you can get this for a 1-level dip in Fiend Warlock as well, so if you're going that route, then you wouldn't want to take command as a magical secret. But this is such a powerful control spell that it's very much worth spending a magical secret on, even at level 10. Other great options include Conjure Elemental, because this can be upcast at level 6 to give you one of the Myrmidons. The Myrmidon summons are a tremendous boost to your party's capabilities over the course of the adventuring day. You can also give them Mantle of Inspiration and use them to tank melee hits, so having a summon is very helpful for this character as well, especially if you have another party member that's less likely to use the temp HP than having a summon would. Having Warden of Vitality can let you be a great healer. Now, it does conflict for your bonus action with Mantle of Majesty, but in fights where you're not using Mantle of Majesty, Warden of Vitality can let you pass out the buff on healing items every turn as a bonus action, so that's another solid option as well. Hunger of Hadar remains an incredible control spell and always worth taking anyways, though a little less so because this character has so many things competing for its concentration. Mass Healing Word also gives you a solid way to apply the buff on healing items, and Lightning Bolt gives you just another powerful combat spell if you just want to do a little more damage. In general, I would be choosing between Conjure Elemental or Command, and I think that the most powerful pick is actually Command, unless you're getting this from Fiend Warlock, but all of those options are incredible. At character level 11, we get our 6th level spell, and bards only get 2 options for 6th level spells. It's either Eye Bite or Otto's Irresistible Dance. Otto's is pretty clearly the choice here. It's yet another way to win boss fights with no saving throw, and Mantle of Majesty already does a pretty good Eye Bite impression, though we might take that next level just for fun anyways. This gives us even more ways to lock down bosses with no saves, so this character can just win boss fights while your party members clean up the chaff. At character level 12, we get access to our 3rd feat, and of course what we're taking is an ability score improvement to max out our charisma. This maxes our casting, so it's obviously what we want to do. If you took 17 charisma and Ethel's Hair, so you have an extra feat, or if you're using a mod that gives you additional feats, there's a couple other options that are totally reasonable that you can add in. Warcaster gives you advantage on concentration saves, which of course is helpful to maintain concentration on Mantle of Majesty. If you are finding that you're dropping concentration a lot in fights, then you can definitely take Warcaster to help out with that, although I would also suggest positioning further back if you're finding that that's happening quite frequently. Lucky also helps helps a lot for that ability as well. This can give you advantage if you get unlucky and are going to have to roll a concentration save, and also just helps you make the important skill checks and other die rolls that you're going to be making throughout the game. So those are the 2 feats that I would look at, but this character is very happy to just take Alert and 2 ASIs, or Alert Actor and 1 ASI. You don't really need any other feats, because all you need is maxed Charisma and to go before the enemies to stop them from acting. For our spell here, this is kind of a for fun spell pick. If there's anything that you feel like your characters are missing significantly, you can go back and grab it from earlier levels. But I'm just going to grab Eye Bite because I find Eye Bite really fun, and it's kind of thematic that this character has so many ways to just lock down enemies completely by reactivating the same ability over and over again, so Eye Bite is just really fun in some late game encounters. Alright my friends, that is the College of Glamor Bard, but of course we can make the character significantly stronger through proper itemization, and I'm also going to talk about multiclassing, so let's get to those. For items for this character, there's basically 2 things that we're looking for from our item set, and a lot of different ways that we can accomplish those 2 things. Firstly, we're looking for increases to our spell save DCs and initiative so that enemies get locked down before they can ever act. This character has +8 initiative by default, but even small increases will mean that we go before every enemy, including the very dangerous late game bosses that are what this character specializes in defeating. Items like the Fistbreaker Helm that give us an additional spell save DC and extra initiative are excellent for that reason. Items like the Robe of the Weave that give us extra save DC, and a staff or weapon like Marka Heshkir that gives us extra spell save DC all contribute to that strategy. Mark a Heshkir, of course, is best in slot for every caster, and this one is no exception. It gives you extra casts of 6-level spells, increases your spell save DC, and also makes you a potent damage threat all by itself, because it gives you the short rest casts of Chain Lightning, so this character can now do a bunch of non-concentration based damage when you get Mark a Heshkir, but any staff with additional spell save DC is what you're going to be looking for your character. I also highly recommend having 2 hand crossbows equipped, especially for the early game, because this gives you a great bonus action if you're in a fight where you're not using Mantle of Majesty, and this character otherwise doesn't have that many bonus actions, except for refreshing Mantle of Inspiration hit points, so having just the offhand attack can be very, very useful, and lets you add some more utility by like setting things on fire with the Hellfire hand crossbow and so on, so having a pair of hand crossbows very helpful for this character as well. Other great options for your helmet include Birthright. Increasing your charisma, of course, makes you better at everything this character is trying to do, and in the early game, the Warped Headband of Intellect is actually quite useful for this character as well. Since you're going to be the party face, you'll be making almost all of the intelligence-based skill checks. Most parties don't have another character that needs this item, so this character is a great user for that if you want to be good at skill checks. Again, increases to our spell save DC include things like the Elixir of Battle Mage's Power. This character doesn't generate Arcane Acuity any other way, so Battle Mage's Power is a massive increase to our power level overall. Special mention as well for the Wondrous Gloves, which are the best in slot gloves for this character, although the Helldust Gloves and their save DC increase are still useful, but this gives us armor class, which is something we very much want, and also extra uses of Bardic Inspiration so that this character can do even more Mantle of Inspiration charges and keep your party going even longer by passing out more and more hit points. A bonus action for plus 40 hit points is a really nice bonus action, so having even more of those available makes this character much stronger. Next up, we want increases to our defensive capabilities, our saving throws, and our armor class. Boosts to our saving throws make us better at maintaining concentration if we do get hit, and boosts to our armor class mean that we won't get hit. So this character is a very high priority character for getting items like the Cloak and Ring of Protection that increase your armor class, the evasive shoes that increase your armor class, and so on. Having this character's AC as high as possible and giving enemies disadvantage on attacks against them with the Cloak of Displacement means enemies are very unlikely to choose your Glamour Bard as the target of your attacks. And since they're kind of the linchpin of your party, as long as the Bard's alive, everybody else will still be alive. You really don't want them to be focused down by the enemies. So between positioning and increases to your AC and making enemies less likely to target them at all, you will be able to keep your whole party alive. The best in slot armor for this character is the Helldusk armor, of course, because it does not require armor proficiencies and is the best late game armor, though the Elegant Studded Leather is also very nice if you only have light armor proficiency and aren't playing a Githyanki, because the extra initiative gets you to plus 10 or plus 11 with the Fistbreaker Helm, so this character will very reliably go before every enemy, and the shield spell can be used to keep yourself from getting hit and losing concentration on an important spell. The Robe of the Weave is also a great pick, just gives you more armor class and bonuses to your save DC, and you want to combine that with mage armor, either cast from a scroll or from a party member. Speaking of scrolls, this character is amazing at using scrolls. We will often be spending our concentration on Mantle of Majesty and our bonus action. That leaves us the ability to just spam scrolls with our action. So this character is going to want to carry a lot of scrolls because you are one of the characters in the game that is most likely to have the opportunity to use them. Your save DCs will be really high already, so scrolls are very, very effective in this character's hands. Items like the Spellcrux Amulet that let you refresh your 6th level spell slots are good for this character, though less important than they are for druids and clerics. So if you have a druid or a cleric in your party, then I would recommend using these spell restoration slots for those instead. You basically already have an extra 6th level spell every day in the form of Mantle of Majesty, so you don't need the refresh as much as those other characters do. Some other options as well. The Amulet of Misty Step gives you a great panic button. Of course, every character in the game should try to have access to Misty Step, and this character doesn't get it by default, so having the Amulet of Misty Step can help keep you alive. Ketheric's Shield, if you have shield proficiency from your race or from multiclassing, very powerful as well, and more increase to your spell save DC and armor class. And if you have medium armor proficiency, then the Armor of Agility helps maintain concentration on your spells, as well as giving you very, very high armor class, even before you get a shield, if you somehow get both from multiclassing. The Boots of Striding are also excellent. You're going to be concentrating on stuff. The concentration, Focused Stride, the momentum only comes when you cast a spell that requires concentration, but the Boots of Striding do work if you're concentrating on Mantle of Majesty. You can't get knocked prone. One of the ways to lose concentration is to be knocked prone, so the Boots of Striding protect you from that. Again, only use if you have medium armor proficiency from race or class level dips. And the Helm of Baldur, also very helpful if you have medium armor proficiency, because, again, getting stunned or critically hit are one of the ways that this character can just get dropped. So you really want to focus your defensive items on this character in order to keep them alive, because as long as they're alive, so will be the rest of your party. So increases to your spell save DC, very valuable for landing your spells. Increases to your defenses to stop enemies from attacking you and to make sure that you survive if they do attack you are the next most important thing. Finally, as I mentioned, Glamour Bards can benefit a ton from 1 or 2 level dips in a large number of other classes, so it's worth talking about those level dips and how they can be used to make this character stronger. As you noticed, I'm sure, when we were leveling up, level 10 was the really big power spike for this character, where we maxed out our inspiration and got magical secrets and already have Mantle of Majesty. So, taking up to 2 levels in another class can be a pretty significant increase to the character's overall power level. 1 level of Cleric, for example, Life Cleric, can make us a much better healer, let us use the buff on heal items much more easily, and of course gives us heavy armor and shield proficiency as well, so it makes the character significantly better at defending itself. We also get guidance as a cantrip, so we have a lot more utility. So a 1 level dip into Life or Light Domain Cleric can give the character a significant boost to its overall party utility and power level. 1 level of Fighter gets you heavy armor and shield proficiency, and if you take it as your first level, Constitution save proficiency, so you'll maintain concentration on your spells more easily. You also get the Defense Fighting style, giving you even more armor class, or the Protection Fighting style to help keep an ally alive, which is thematic for the character, if not necessarily the most powerful pick. 1 level of Sorcerer is very similar in that it gives you Constitution save proficiency. It also gives you Magic Missile and Shield as spells, so a great defensive option, or Mage Armor and Shield if you intend to be using the Robe of the Weave to stay alive. It also gives you the tremendous utility from Storm Sorcery, allowing you to move around the battlefield much more easily, and a lot better combat options with cantrips like Ray of Frost and Bone Chill available, which are better combat cantrips than bards get. So 1 level of Sorcerer as your first level, also very, very strong. 2 levels of Paladin gives you the Oath of the Crown Paladin's bonus to ally attack rolls, making you even better at supporting your allies. Gets you smite attacks, so you can actually attack in melee combat, especially in sort of the mid-game, which does give you some burst damage, and also gives you the command spell so that you can lock down enemies with command as a spell known. It'll be charisma based because you're a paladin, so you get all of those effects, as well as heavy armor and shield proficiency, defense, fighting style, and so on. Other great options include a level or 2 of Warlock, and really any of the Warlocks except the Great Old One are excellent here. Hexblade Warlock, of course, is broken as a 1 level dip, giving you shields, medium armor proficiency, gives Hexblade's Curse and Eldritch Blast for a bunch of extra damage, so it makes you a much better sustained damage dealer. 2 levels gets you darkness, the ability to see through darkness, so if you have an ally who's using darkness, then that can be a very effective use for your character as well. Archfey gives you the Fey Presence ability, so you can frighten enemies that get near you, or do a big AoE charm, making enemies fail their saving throws automatically against Mantle of Majesty with Fey Presence. And 1 level of Fiend. Fiends get Command as a spell known, so again, you get a very powerful class feature, or very, very powerful lockdown spell very early if you take 1 level of Fiend. 1 level of wizard gets you all of the wizard spells in the game that you can learn through scrolls because of how wizard spellcasting works. So as you can see, there are a ton of 1 and 2 level dips. Special mention as well for 2 levels of Star Druid, about which I did an entire build guide, which you can find under the video title, My Favorite New Support Character. This gives you a tremendous amount of utility, as well as making it basically impossible for you to fail your concentration saves because of the dragon aspect of Star Druid, keeping your concentration saves intact. Alright, my friends, I hope that you've enjoyed this look at the Glamour Bard. I think that this character is an incredible amount of fun to play and is currently being highly underrated by the community as a whole because it's a support character, and so it is more difficult to understand the impact that this character has at a glance compared to a damage dealer where you can just look at the damage numbers, but this character is incredibly impactful for keeping your party alive in honor mode runs and has an extremely fun and unique playstyle. I highly recommend it. Of course, as always, if you have enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a comment and hit the like button. Helps me out a ton with the algorithm, so I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. And you can subscribe to my channel for more Patch 8 Baldur's Gate 3 build guides and other strategy game analysis. Cheers, folks. I'll catch you next time.